Good evening, all. Welcome to the landlord and property managers meetings. We are going tonight. I'm hopeful to have a wonderful meetings where we are looking forward to have everybody's input. Let me first recognize the Councilwoman Carol Keys, who is here with us. Our city manager, Madame Régine Monestim. Assistant City Manager, Attorney. Did I say manager? I'm sorry. Jennifer Warren, Assistant City Attorney. God. And we are going to go through the ordinance, the changes, and what we are bringing in. And also in the package that you have, there is comparison to other cities that have had the exact same problem with the city of North Miami, and they were able to solve it. And you see what they have done, and we're trying to make sure that our residents in the city of North Miami are well treated. And I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate our wonderful landlords as well. As much as there are complaints in the city regarding landlords and the buildings, but as much as well we have some landlords that respect their tenants, that make sure that their property is well managed and it's cleaned. And those landlords I would like to congratulate, and I'm sure all of you knows who you are. But to those who believe that it's only taking a rent on a monthly basis, charging people for late fee and not maintaining their property, on behalf of the 65,000 residents of the city, let me say, shame on you. We are going to proceed with our city attorney, and of course, everybody would have an opportunity to speak. We will ask you to come to the mic, and everybody will have 2 minutes to intervene. Again, Officer Blanchard is passing around the ordinance for those of you who don't have it. As I'm seeing you doing it already, raise your hand, and then he will make sure that you get a copy of it. And again, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, my name is Régine Monestim, City Attorney for the City of North Miami. What I will be doing is going through the Chapter 5 Landlord Registration Ordinance. I'm going to begin. This is also being aired on Channel 77 and on the web. So I'm going to invite those that are watching us to log into our website. And for those of you that have iPads or smartphones, the materials that we will be discussing, that material is posted on the website. It's right under the public workshop on the front page of the City of North Miami website. And there are 3 documents that are in the link under the public workshop. The first is the Landlord Registration Program Fee Schedule, which we'll be discussing. The second one is the Landlord Registration Ordinance. And then the third document is a city comparison chart that lists some of the cities. We couldn't list all of the cities that have it, but we wanted to highlight some of the cities that do have similar or identical programs. So I'm going to begin with the list of the cities in Florida that have a rental program either identical or similar to the one that is being proposed. The city of Lauderhill, Coral Springs, Hollywood, Lauderhill Lakes, North Lauderhill, Wilton Manors, Daytona Beach, Delray Beach, Cocoa, Temple Terrace, North Miami Beach, and Miami Gardens. I will not go into detail with respect to what they're charging and for their annual inspection, for their renewal fees, for their application fees, for their permit fees, for their late fees, and so on and so forth. You can certainly look at the document either online or for those of you that are with us, that is in your packet for the particular details. But suffice it to say that each of the cities and their varying cities have different programs and have allocation of how it's applicable in their particular city. So I wanted to have that as a basis for review when considering what the city of North Miami is doing. Now I'd like to turn to the actual ordinance, which is located in Chapter 5, which will be located because it's not yet passed and adopted by the city, which it will be located in Chapter 5. We are creating an entirely new program and an entirely new article entitled Landlord Registration. I'm not going to read word for word. I will just summarize each of the sections, but I will try to highlight those sections that we believe are pertinent. So the purpose, what is the purpose of this landlord registration program? Well, the city recognizes the need for safe, decent, well-maintained residential property within the city. And this regulation is intended to ensure that residential rental units meet minimum standards for the health, safety, and welfare of all residents, and that responsible persons are readily available to respond and to take appropriate action when necessary to prevent or remedy the occurrences of nuisances. And what is it applicable to? The requirements of this article shall apply to all residential rental properties with 2 or more units located within the city, and the owners of all such units and properties and their agents. It addresses single-family homes, duplexes, rentals of less than, and single-family homes, duplexes, and rentals of less than 3 units are exempted. However, with respect to residential rental dwelling units that constitute a public lodging under Section 509.103 Florida statutes, any inspection conducted by the city shall be limited to determining compliance with the Florida Building Code and the Florida Fire Prevention Code as provided in Section 509.32 of the Florida statute. A license is required, will be required for residential property owners, and no license will be issued unless the owner complies with the ordinance. The application process. There will be an application. The forms of the application will be supplied by the city. The application, like many applications, will ask for certain basic requirements: the number of the residential units, the name of the owner, and so on. Their designated agent, who is the person that will be that will need to be the person the city contacts in case of emergencies, in case of needing to reach someone for that particular property. Prior to leasing or renting a dwelling unit covered by this license, the applicant will provide the tenants with the laws related to residential tenancies, and an article of this landlord registration and other informational literature. And they shall post this in their lobbies so that tenants as well as landlords understand and know what this law is and how it applies. Is there anyone here that speaks only Spanish or Creole that requires translation? Yes. One person.
You may want to ask it in that language.
They know. Do you speak English? Do you speak only English? People who speak other languages usually know that. So we don't. We would have to ask for our translator, interpreter. Can someone from Code Enforcement see if our interpreter is available? Mr. Lewis? And it may also be helpful, Madam Mayor, if it's one person, Madame, vous parlez créole? So, il y a plusieurs monde qui parlent créole? Oh, no, they want, I think they want copies of those that are raising their hands in the back, just want copies. So perhaps I can go through the ordinance with our Creole speaker so that we can move this workshop along. Grounds for denial: an applicant who has failed to disclose or misrepresented certain material facts may be denied. An applicant who fails to obtain certain certificates of occupancies and other necessary papers will be denied. If you are violating local health authority standards, you will be denied. Inspections. Section 5-42. After receipt of a completed application and payment of the application and inspection fee, the city shall inspect the residential rental property and units prior to rental or annually at the city's discretion to determine compliance with the Florida Building Code and all applicable minimum housing codes. In accordance with Section 83.53 of the Florida statutes, a landlord may enter the dwelling unit at any time for the protection or preservation of the premises upon reasonable notice to the tenant and at a reasonable time. Further, the tenant shall not unreasonably withhold consent to the landlord to enter the dwelling unit from time to time in order to inspect the premises. So this last sentence that I just read to you is not created by this ordinance. This is actually word for word what is listed in the Florida state statutes, the landlord-tenant state statute that addresses the obligation and rights of landlords and tenants. The city, Section B, the city will issue the license or provide the applicant with written notice of any defects, which must be remedied before a license is issued. The license may be renewed annually concurrent with the business tax receipt renewal as provided in Chapter 11 of the City Code. For inspections involving multiple residential dwelling units at one location and upon consent of the property owner, local agent, and/or tenant, a random sampling of such dwelling units will be periodically inspected at a minimum as follows. For 10 units or less, all units will be inspected. For buildings that have 11 to 30 units, 35%, a minimum of 35% of the units will be inspected. For buildings that have 31 to 50 units, a minimum of 30 units will be inspected. And for buildings that have more than 51 units, a minimum of 30% of the units, for a total of 30 units, will be inspected. Each residential property and unit regulated by this article shall be re-inspected subject to the sections that we just read. The date of the city's initial inspection shall establish an annual anniversary date. The city shall maintain a re-inspection schedule for currently licensed units. In addition, any currently licensed unit or property may be inspected upon reasonable notice. The property owner and agent shall permit the city to inspect all premises governed by this article to determine compliance and shall fully cooperate with such inspections. The property owners or their agents shall notify tenants of planned inspections of their residential rental units and shall make every effort to obtain the tenant's consent to entry for inspection purposes. Inspection fees. There shall be an inspection fee per unit as established by a resolution, which we will address shortly. Reinspection fee shall also be established, and failure to pay the required fees will result in fines and penalties under the city's already established code enforcement process. Tenant information shall be designated and listed and provided at all times. Enforcement. The code enforcement special magistrate shall have jurisdiction to enforce the provisions of this article, and any person, form, corporation, or agent determined to be in violation shall be subject to all penalties and remedies available to the magistrate as provided by law. tenant violations if a notice of violation arises due to acts or omissions of a tenant, and the tenant fails to make the necessary correction, the property owner or agent shall remedy the condition by whatever legal means necessary. The property owner is ultimately responsible for any violation under this article. Suspension or revocation of license. Failure to comply with any of the requirements shall subject property owners to suspension or revocation of their licenses. Repeated incidents of nuisances such as and crimes are also grounds for revocation. Prior to initiating suspension or revocation proceedings, written notice shall be delivered to the owner or designated agent identified in the registration. Suspension or revocation hearing. If the violation is not corrected after written notice, or if further violations occur, a hearing shall be held to determine whether the license should be suspended or revoked as follows. Written notice shall be provided. The hearing shall be no sooner than 15 days. Lack of knowledge or acquiescence shall not be a defense. If the special magistrate finds the violation or violations have been corrected and there is no threat to public safety or public nuisance exists, the action will be dismissed. If the special magistrate finds that the violations have not been corrected, he or she shall issue a final order suspending or revoking the license. An aggrieved party has the right to appeal. The obligation to terminate tenancies after license revocation. If the license is suspended or revoked pursuant to this article, the licensee shall have 15 days from the date of order to commence proceedings to terminate any existing tenancies and recover possession of the residential rental property and unit or units under the state law. The licensee shall diligently pursue the process to completion. Upon request, the licensee shall provide copies and all documents provided to the tenants or filed with the court to the city. After completion of the process and removal of any tenants, no unit or unit shall be rented to any person during the period of suspension or revocation. Renting a unit or units during a period of suspension or revocation shall constitute a violation. Pursuant to Chapter 162 of the Florida statutes, the city may file a civil action in the appropriate court to enforce violations of this article. The special magistrate may establish terms and conditions for reinstatement of a license after a period of suspension or revocation. And that is essentially the ordinance that the city will be proposing to the council for passage. Fees. After due diligence review by the administrative body here, the fees that are suggested are as follows. An application fee, $100. Application updates, $5. Late application fee, $50. Inspection fee, $25 per unit. Reinspection fee, $40 per unit. Additional fines, a maximum fine of $250 per day after special magistrate adjudication. And that concludes the presentation, which we reviewed the ordinance, we reviewed the fees, and we discussed other cities that have the similar or identical rental property programs. At this time, I'm going to ask those of you who wish to comment to please approach the microphone, and we will be taking notes diligently and taking all of your comments in consideration before we bring the proposed ordinance to council. Thank you.
Is the $25?
At this time, I'm going to
Would like
ask
for you to come
anyone who
forward,
wishes to speak to
identify yourself, and then you have 2 minutes to speak. You
Good
can.
evening, Richard Crisanino on behalf of Xanadu Properties. Is the inspection fee based on the number of units that are actually inspected. By way of example, if you have 11 to 30 units, 35% of the units or more are to be inspected. Is the $25 for each unit only that's inspected, or for all the units that you own?
For the units that will be inspected.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I will say at this point, so this is the ordinance, this is the law, right? So now, once this goes before the council and if passed, then the city administration will need to create the administrative process and procedures for how the law will be implemented. And that has not yet been done. That will be done only after the city council passes the ordinance as to the application of this particular ordinance.
Hi, Keith Hall. Quick question about inspection.
Please identify yourself, sir.
Keith Hall, H-A-L-L.
From?
Apartment, M&K Apartments.
Thank you.
Okay, in reference for inspection, is it for, if the tenant moves out, do you have to get an inspection before you put somebody else, or is it a one-time only per anniversary period of the inspection?
Right, so it will be annually or prior to a tenant moving in at the city's discretion. And that's where the administration will be making a determination based on the type of property, based on when the property was last inspected, based on whether there are existing violations, and so on and so forth.
So
it could be annually, or it could be prior to a tenant moving into the property.
So if it's prior to a tenant, is there a time frame when the city must inspect it, or it could take days or weeks?
So those types of questions and details have to come in terms of the administering of the particular ordinance.
Okay. And then one more thing, in reference to the inspection inside a property, what are you guys, is it going to be a checklist, is it a standard, what are you looking for?
There's already, so the other thing is, there is already minimum housing inspections, right? So the city and the county and the state inspects properties. So there are guidelines. There are Florida Building Code and there are minimum housing guidelines that the city will be using in this program.
So the same as, right now they have minimum housing, which is outside the property. What would change on the inside? Is that something listed in your site or website already?
In terms of, there will be a checklist, but that checklist has not been created yet.
Okay. And just for, I guess once you start, it would be a grace period as far as what they're looking for. If the inspector come in and say this is what the problem is, there a grace period, or are you immediately going to be fined for that?
So code division of the city used to be called code enforcement, and there was a change to call it code compliance. Why? Because the idea is to encourage compliance. It's not a punitive measure. This process is a process to educate both the tenants and the landlords. So this is not punitive. This is to generate better values for the landlords. This is to provide for better housing for all of the tenants in the city. So it's not punitive in nature. So absolutely, the city will be working with folks. Absolutely, there will be grace periods. This is, I believe, the third workshop that the city has done to reach out to the residents and to the landlords to educate them about this program.
And the application fee of 100, is that the same as the business tax we currently pay, or this is additional?
No, this is an additional
addition
fee.
to the 100
Correct.
we're already paying right now.
Correct.
And I think for the checklist, it's going to be based on what the people from the code enforcement and the tenants, when they come and complain about their apartment, we have to check on those mold, air conditioning not working, refrigerator not working, oven not working, ceiling ready to fall. Those are the things that usually when the tenant come to the city and complain, the fact that they have reached out to their landlord many occasions and they have not complied, probably in the inspection of those apartments, those are the things that they're going to be looking for. Yes, sir.
Yes, Michael Suman Entertainment, right up the street. It seems to me like there are already standards in place, and I think you even referenced before, a few minutes ago, that there are already standards in place for fair housing and code enforcement. This seems like just another layer because we're not enforcing rules that are already in place. Comments?
No comment.
Hi. Okay. My name's Rodney King. I've been renting in units in North Miami for 35 years. And my oldest tenant has been there for 19 years in the same apartment. So I don't think I'm a problem landlord. I've never been sued. I have no fines. I have no problems. Okay. And the tenant list I have now is former tenants who call me back and want to move back. So I don't need to even advertise. My concern about this is the flyer arrived at one of my tenants, and she opened the envelope and read it and phoned me in a panic, "What is this?" I went over, and she said to me, to be honest, "Some of us people are not here legally, and now the city is going to want our names and leases, and you're going to be licensed, and the INS is going to find out, and they're concerned it's going to be public." I said, "No, the city is not going to be informing the government of the names of tenants." She said, "It's going to be public record, isn't it?" I said, "Well, I guess if it's city, how can it not be public record, right? It is going to be public record." And so now I have some very upset tenants about this. Now, I don't know if they're legal or not. I don't enforce immigration laws. I'm just a landlord. It's not my business to enforce immigration laws. But I can tell you, among my tenants, this circular you sent out has created a big problem, right? It really has. And I said to the tenant, "Come here." She said, "Are you joking? I'm not coming here to the city hall." So you may not see this problem, but I think you may find there is a far bigger problem with this idea than maybe you thought about. Okay,
Thank you.
that's my comment.
Good evening, Jose Dacaret for Coinco Investment Company. I feel that I'm like this gentleman. We've been renting apartments here for a long time. We own about 250 units in the city. Our properties are always maintained. We don't have any problems with our tenants. But I do want to say something. I believe that this ordinance will diminish property values. It's not going to increase property values. You know why? No investor will ever buy again in this city. It's just like if you own a restaurant and a couple of people get sick. So you're going to have an inspector taste the food before it's served to the customers because a couple of people got sick? I mean, what's next? You know, what other businesses are you going to go after to see if the owners are doing the right thing? There's already laws in place. The tenant has the right, and they do call the city if they have a complaint. And an inspector is sent to the unit, and us as landlords have to fix whatever problem there is. You know, so the bad landlords are always going to exist, just like any other type of owner for other businesses. This isn't going to resolve what you're trying to resolve, and it's going to diminish property values because you're going to create more expense to the landlords. The buildings will produce less money. You're also going to have days that are lost while you do the inspections. This is going to create less money that is going to come into the properties. And I don't know, I think a few bad apples, and you have had problems with a few landlords, are going to damage the property values through the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dennis Samuels from DMA Property Group. I've owned property in North Miami rental apartments for over 13 years now, and I don't have any problems with the city. They're in San Souci. My question is, how logistically is it going to work as far as, you know, the inspections? Because for us as landlords, the critical thing is to keep our units occupied. So if we're waiting on you guys to do the inspections, we got downtime and that's costing us money. And as the last gentleman said, that's going to decrease the value of our properties. You know, that's a very big concern of ours. And I think a lot of us who run our properties correctly, who don't have violations, are being penalized because you've had a few bad landlords. I think the problem is it's a code enforcement problem. You guys have the means, you have the means to do the inspections, and I think you need to go after those people who are not doing the correct thing. I don't think we should be penalized.
Thank you.
My name is Clovis Noel. I own Noel Apartment. I've been doing business in the city over 20 years. I own over 56 units. Okay, I think this idea is 99% wrong, and I can tell you. When you're dealing with a mortgage company, you have a loan over $1 million. Now you are waiting for the city to do inspection to collect rent to pay bill. I think that's going to be a layer adding to foreclosure in Miami. And I think people that violate, that the wrong thing should be punished, but like myself, I overspend to fix my unit. And I can call myself one of the best landlords in Miami. Okay? So, and I've been good to my tenant. I do few evictions because I haven't get paid. If we talk about water, when I started doing business in Miami, we were paying a little bit for water. Now we buy water by the gallon now. Okay? So if this added fee will create more problem, we will see more business falling by the wayside. Our people are going to sell the property and go somewhere else, not Miami. Instead of looking for more, they're going to get less. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Rubin. I'm an owner of a property in North Miami with my husband, Leonard. We have a property on 6th Avenue. I'm a licensed real estate broker, and I've been doing this work for a long time. I've been doing this work since 1976. This is totally wrong. You are really reaching. You are going to make it hard for us. Let me tell you something. It is no picnic to rent property here. People don't even want to come to North Miami. When you tell them I have a building on 6th Avenue, they say, oh, I don't want to go there. That's no good. Please do not make it so hard for us. It is hard now to make a living because your expenses to us are very high. We are entitled to make a living. This is awful. You are intruding in our business. When I sign a lease with a tenant, it's between me and the tenant. It has nothing to do with the city of North Miami. The only people that I have an obligation to when I sign a lease is Section 8 and the city of Miami. I have a Section 8 tenant. I have a tenant with the city of Miami. They sign a lease with me. They pay part of the rent. They have rules that they want me to follow. I follow them because they're paying me and because I have agreed to accept their tenant. I keep my building in good condition. I have never had a problem with anyone here. My tenants have never complained to anyone. I am a very good landlady. People want to be in my buildings. You are way out of line here with all this. You are treating us all like we are your bad tenants, and that is not the case. Because you have two terrible tenants here in North Miami, you are penalizing everyone else. Why don't you go after them? Why don't you foreclose the liens on their properties? Leave us alone. Let us make a living. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Yvette Borrello, and I am an investor. Just on November, we closed on 12320 Northeast 4th Court, Villa Isa. I have 20 years experience owning properties on Miami Beach. This is my first time that I bought a property in North Miami. Like my fellow here neighbors and investors, I found the word city very difficult to be welcome to business. This city is really difficult. I didn't have an idea of what I was putting myself and my family when we purchased this building. Nevertheless, I was able to close. I was able to comply. I have very good tenants. I have a couple that are bad tenants that I'm going to start evictions on them. My tenant, for that 20 years, have tenants calls me back. I consider myself a very good landlord. But I have to be honest with you. If you want foreign investors here, so if you want people who are putting money to build, to renovate those buildings, you need to make more friendly, business friendly. Currently, your city, the way that the city is running, and this is a positive, this is a part of criticism because I think you have a great potential in this city, and you are not looking at it. You have a great investors putting money into your buildings. If you can make lease, maybe less code, less regulations, more regulations, it scares investors. And well, these people, they are completely right. I was between a building in Pequeña Habana, Little Havana, and a building here. The building in Little Havana was horrendous, was in worse shape. But the people want to buy there. It seems to be a more safe market. You know, and this building was able to reduce the price because nobody was buying it. It's a beautiful building in great shape. I was surprised of the price that I got it. And they are completely right. You have a great potential here, but you have too many regulations. You're chasing away investors who can fix and bring a better quality of buildings or fix the buildings that currently you have. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Leonard Rubin. You've already heard from my wife, Sandra. In regard to the building that we own on Northeast 6th Avenue, we find that these new ordinances are overly broad for the purposes intended and excessively intrusive. It invades the rights of privacy of both the landlord and especially the tenants. It deters the tenants from renting. It deters people from selling their property. And it puts this city as though it were a police state with all the regulations governing it. Furthermore, all of the regulations that it seems to want to exercise are already in force under minimum housing standards and the Dade County Code. Consequently, I submit that the ordinance would be unconstitutional both under the state and the federal constitutions. Thank you.
My name is Jorge Carabelli. I'm from Pioneer Apartments. We have 60 units in North Miami, and we've been renting apartments in North Miami for over 25 years. We have apartments in other municipalities, and North Miami is the most difficult to work with. There's more regulations, there's more fees than anything else. I object to this entire program you have here. I have objections on every single page. It would take more than 2 minutes to go over them. I think this entire program needs to be thrown out. What's been said here before, I agree with everyone that's got up here and spoken, especially the point that you have regulations already in place. What you don't have is the enforcement. What you need is an education program. If the problem is that certain landlords are not taking care of the properties, well, educate those tenants. Let those tenants know they have a right to complain to the city, and then the city focus just on those people who are causing the problem. With this program, you're going to be spending 80% of your effort going after people who are already in compliance. That's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and all that money, all those costs is going to now come down to the tenants. It's the tenants that are going to be paying the additional costs for the inspections and for all this administrative work. This is totally wrong. This entire program needs to be thrown out, and what you need to do is start a different way to approach this problem. Thank you.
Any other landlord?
Mayor, Madam City Attorney, Deputy City Attorney, my name is Kenneth H., and I used to be your police chief. And I was the police chief in Bolingbrook, Illinois. And I have lived in this city for over 40 years. May I, Madam Mayor, is it okay? And I am a landlord. and I own 3 beautiful properties for the last 35 years, and I've invested a great deal of money and labor and love into my properties. As a police officer in this city, I have seen the degradation of the quality of life starting back in the 80s. I have seen slumlords come into this city and exploit people. And I used to have a saying that the 2 worst people in the world are slumlords and dope dealers because they both exploit misery. I left here in '97 and I went up to Chicago and I was chief of police in the Chicagoland area. And I had a city twice as large as this city here. And we had rental inspections. Before you could rent an apartment, we were there within a day or 2 after you made an application, and we went in and we checked the apartment for the quality of life. Were the appliances working? Was the apartment painted? Was the floor decent and clean? How you and I would like to live. Well, back in the 80s and the 90s, I went into some of these cesspools on 6th Avenue and other areas in the city, and it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking, the exploitation that was taking place. And when I came back to North Miami some 10 years ago, I had suggested to the then council and mayor that we should have a rental inspection to put these purveyors of misery out of business. And I don't feel it's an infringement on my rights or anybody else's right if I walk into an apartment prior to it being rented and we check it out to make sure that it meets habitable standards. Now, I live in this city. I don't run from the problem. I live in my apartment. I would live in any one of my apartments. And I would gladly pay $75, that's what we used to charge in Illinois, to have someone come in and inspect my apartment. If you see how some of these people are living, the exploitation of people coming to this country, they're living in misery, and it's a disgrace. Now, I have some issues which can be modified with this ordinance. I see some financial hardships on myself. But all in all, I think we should look collectively as business people, as citizens, and see what is going on. This ordinance is not certainly unconstitutional. It is constitutional. Other cities have done this. We have done this in Illinois. And if you feel that it's an infringement upon your business to go in and check an apartment to make sure that it's habitable, I have to vehemently disagree with you, respectfully. You're entitled to your opinion. Besides that, I am a veteran who fought for this country and was wounded 3 times. So I do respect your right to speak, but I have a different opinion on that. And Madam Mayor, members, may I address some of the issues in here which I feel are wrong? Some of the biggest slumlords we have own single-family homes and duplexes. And therefore, I believe if I'm subject to inspection, they should be subject to inspection. That changes the whole dynamics of owning a house. And they should be, they should have an occupational license and a use permit. When I look at the number of homes or a number of apartments that are being checked, I see 11 to 30 units, you're hitting 35%. So that means that you have either 4 to 10 units. 31 to 50, that's 30%, that's 10 to 15 units. 51 or more, minimum of 15 units. I own 3 separate buildings on the same street. They're 4 units each. That means that all of my units would be subject to inspection. That is a financial hardship. I think the percentage of 30% should apply across the board to no matter how many apartments you own.
Okay.
The other thing that I see here is, well, I wanted to see the checklist. If you have a new or remodeled building, let's say we have an investor coming into the city and we take an old building and we rehab it. You get a certificate of occupancy. Why should that landlord or that investor then be subject to a new rental inspection? It doesn't make sense. If we're going to give him a CO, why should we have that? Right now, in my building, I have a fire permit, use permit, occupational license. I pay more for my water and sewer treatment because I pay multifamily. And I feel that the reduction in the fees would be appropriate and more palatable to the business people here and to people like myself that have 4 units. My neighbors over here, we're not making a great deal of money. And some of the things that these people brought up today is true. And that's why I like rental inspections, because it also protects the landlord. You come in and you check my apartment out prior to me renting it, and I have a tenant in there that destroys it and calls the city. Well, here, you guys were in there 2 months ago. You've seen what we're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Mayor, sir, I didn't interrupt you. Kindly don't interrupt me. I feel all in all this is a good ordinance. We could freshen it up. Listen to what some of these people have. Do your rental inspections prior. Go after the bad landlords. If you want to go check them, we have the flexibility to do that in this ordinance. Where when we have a known building over there, we can actually say, hey, we're going to go in there and check it every year. Some of the other people that run good properties, we don't have to check it every year. And look, folks, the good landlords, you know who you are. And I appreciate you. Because when you have a good property, I have good property. When I look around the corner on Venice Lane, I see dumps over there, and what you're doing is you're pulling down my property values. I put my sweat, my energy, my money, everything into my property. And I want it to stay that way. And I don't like looking at a toilet on the next street to pull down my property values. And above all, I want to see people live in a decent place. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is William Previtel, 11950 North Bay Shore Drive, and I'd like to reiterate support for the intent of my beloved friend Chief Each and his sentiments regarding that we should clean up the city and have better guidelines and such in place and just have a better quality of life. Where I differ, though, and my friend, I'm surprised. From our different political leanings, it wasn't mentioned of the free market. That basically, if the apartments are not good and well maintained and not attractive to potential tenants, then they don't get rented. And I would think that anyone with conservative values particularly, would believe in that. I, on the other hand, am battling at this time to point out a number of issues on this that are inconsistent in many ways. First off, as was pointed out, the inspections of the different units are very flawed. You could have 10 units and have 10 inspections. You could have 11 units and have 3 inspections, 3 or 4 inspections. And it goes on as you go up the line. That seems inherently flawed. In addition to that, if we're inspecting, are we inspecting individual units, and is the focus on a unit, or is the inspection on the entire building or project? What happens when you have, I don't have a 100-unit building, but suppose somebody has a 100-unit building and they have 1 or 2 very problematic units, and they just can't, it's hard to, sometimes maybe you're not renting them out, it takes a while to get them fixed, maybe they're being renovated, maybe there's something else, some other characteristic about them, and you want to take them off the market. How does that enter the equation? Can they say, well, please look at my 98 units because we're working on these other 2, we've taken them off the market. Will that be allowed? Or are they going to be held accountable for that? Now, if they're held accountable for that, say it's 1 unit, and they get this license revoked or suspended, what happens? Does that mean the whole building goes down? What are the remedies for that? Does that mean that their license is taken away and someone else starts the guardianship of the building? Are there now fees for every one of the units? Is it 1 unit gets the $250 a day, or is it now every unit gets it? Are you starting to move people out of the buildings? What kind of hassle is this going to amount to? Has this been thought out? In addition to that, I'd like to know who exactly, what inspection standards are being implemented here. Has that been spelled out exactly what it is? There are various inspection standards. Is this just something superficial? Is it something construction related? How detailed will it be? Whatever it is, it should be spelled out very specifically. In addition to that, who is going to do the inspections? Exactly who? Who is responsible? Is it the housing department, community planning and development, the police department, some other entity? Is it being privatized? Because what happens is when we look at this in this long list of fees, it really seems much more like a tax. It's guised in the intent to, to corral and hold accountable a few of the landlords, and there are some landlords that are truly horrific, and they should be held accountable. But it really is, in its nature, punitive to many, many of the landlords in the city. So maybe a compromise could be drawn. Maybe it could be less demanding because we do have other code enforcement that is taking on these responsibilities, and they are in place, and they are, I think, relatively good. We have very regular inspections, and we try to keep everything up to date. But maybe the better compromise is to have a lower number of inspections, possibly 20 or 25%, and if you pass that, then maybe you get a waiver for the next year or two. Does not mean you get waived on your fees, but maybe it should be, and here it is, here's another discriminatory thing, if we put fees related to a certain number of units and it's only for the number of inspections, that means that the mom and pop shop with 10 units is now paying 10 fees, but the big 500 unit complex is paying only 30%, and they're paying much lower. Does not seem right. Should it not be that you have X amount of units and therefore you pay that set fee? So this can be very much simplified. We can simplify the number of units inspected, my suggestion 20%, and simplify it based on the number of units. It's a flat fee for every unit, however many units you have. And if you want to declare that 1, 2, 3, or 10 of your units are not to be considered, then you can take them, you still pay the fee, but you can take them off the inspection schedule, and you'll say you will not rent them until you get them re-inspected so that you're not held accountable for something that you're trying to resolve. Because this could lead to really horrific situations with the magistrate and everything else if taken in its full intensity. And I don't think we want that. As it was pointed out, this could grind down the business aspect of it. It starts to take the focus off the truly problematic situations that we have, and we need to focus this effort where it will get the most impact to get the best quality of life and to maintain the best quality of business and to not harass the residents that live in the city of North Miami so that they will feel welcomed here. So thank you for your consideration. And I know this is probably a done deal. So I would really appreciate the consideration in modifying this, as others have appealed, so that this could be maybe held up a bit, maybe modified, maybe have another workshop. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your consideration.
Can I have 1 minute again to say something in the spirit of a compromise, perhaps, with all this discussion? If the goal is housing quality and the quality of units, and as a landlord, I know many people here objecting to costs and inspections and whatever. What about the idea of requiring that a city ordinance that every lease in North Miami must contain an addendum in large type that informs the tenant that there is a phone number to call, that North Miami enforces housing quality standards, and if you have a problem in this apartment or you see things that you don't think meet appropriate housing quality standards, here is a phone number to call, and an inspector will come, and the inspector will notify the landlord, and an assessment will be made. Then you're only inspecting the problems. Most of us here, I'm sure, don't have a problem with the quality of our housing, and we're feeling victimized. I would have no problem putting this clause in every lease I offer, in big type. Call the city for an inspection if you think there's any quality problem. Thank you.
Hello there. My name is Joanne Parker, and I have had a business for over 50 years in North Miami, and I must tell you, you are on the way to destroying your city. Why are you going to do this? I am so angry with you. First of all, what you're doing is making it possible for investors to come in here and buy property 50 cents on the dollar. Aren't you proud of yourself that you're ruining the income of the people that are here? I am willing to pay a more tax. That doesn't mean that I don't think you're really grinding it to the pulp right now, but I'm willing to do it. And why am I willing to do it? Because you have some excellent people working here who are police officers who deserve higher salaries. You have fire people who deserve higher policies, income. Now, why don't you admit what you're doing is you're trying to line the pocket of your North Miami politicians so you can mess with your budget? Now, one thing further. What you're doing is you're playing in the hands of Agenda 21, which is the United Nations. The United Nations wants to take over the communities. North Miami is a member of the United Nations. And so as many other areas, communities, even Miami-Dade is a member. Now, the only one that I had heard speaking here who had a handle on what was going on was the Rubens. And if you're still here, let me congratulate you because you understand what's happening in this country, and it is becoming fascist. And you have probably had friends that lived in Germany, and it was slow and insidious what happened with fascism. And that's what is happening here. And this is not the United States of America that I grew up in. And I'm an old lady now, and I was in this business since I was 21 years old. I have had tenants. I know you're disinterested, ma'am. I know that. But I have had tenants for 20, 21, 22 years. I don't find people renting property that is not well taken care of. Hey, don't you know that this is supposed to be a free economy? And if you don't like a property, you don't move in it. Now, let me ask you, how many red-blooded Americans are in this room? Raise your hand. I'm happy to see that. Now, there is something that you can do about this, the red-blooded Americans. You can get together and you can take this thing by storm. Or do you want to be like what happened in Nazi Germany? Now, you've got my name, and my location where my office is 625 Northeast 123rd Street. You can contact me. I'll give anyone my phone number. Anybody wants to get together with me, I'm happy to speak to you. But I am tired of people coming up to this podium and asking about a $25 or a $40 item. That's not what you're supposed to be asking. This thing should be stomped out. And I'm very unhappy that we don't have Americans up here on this platform.
I'm here, Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Ilana Baroni Burdick, and I'm at 2425 Northeast 135th Street. And I need to take a breath. I heard a lot of good ideas here, things that I couldn't put into words, thanks to the other people who spoke. And it just showed to me that some of the questions I had in going over even what I got on the internet and what I was handed out here, there's some ambiguity in the language. We need to tighten it down. I think some of the ideas that were presented here are really valid. Yes, we shouldn't be punishing the good landlords for those of us who put a lot of money into our buildings. And I think I'm one of the landlords, I know I am, that you could eat off the floors when I turn over an apartment. I will not allow somebody else to live in an apartment that I wouldn't live in. And yes, I have seen the apartments over on 6th Avenue when I sat on the Code Enforcement Board, and they are horrific. Nobody should have to live like that. And the reason why they do live there is because they have a little bit of money, and that's all they can get, and they need a roof over their head, and shame on the landlords for doing that. It puts a bad name on the rest of us. I've always believed in quality of life and living for everybody. That's why my family runs our building the way we do, and we try to set an example for everybody else. I hope that you can take some of these things that were presented to you by some of the eloquent speakers. I'm not a speaker, I'm not a lawyer, but I hear good things and I know them when I hear them, and put them in so that we can fine-tune this a bit. The application fee here, is it per building, per apartment? It's not specified. That to me is ambiguity, not specific language. Sorry, it's late. The tongue doesn't want to work. And also, I have a lot of in-house transfers. I have tenants who either upsize or downsize, and they're a good tenant. I give them the choice of the next one coming up to offer it to them. How is that handled? Am I going to get a fee for that if that goes in here? The change information in the landlord database, I'm sure that means that there's change of ownership. That wasn't specified. The rate per unit inspected, is that on change of a tenant if I have an in-house transfer, or on a yearly inspection, and is it for the units of the building? Because you're proposing that we're inspected. I have so many inspections now. The health department comes around twice for the swimming pool. I do have minimum housing coming. They come through, and I guess they didn't come back because they thought it was a clean building, and I'm happy. But I'd like to see things tightened up so that everything that's been said here in a positive note can be addressed, and everybody can feel happy with what's being done. But please do remember, the bottom line for each one of us is our dollars are shrinking. And I hate to say it, but rising real estate taxes, insurance rates, water rates, electric rates. I had a tenant who passed away in her apartment. Unmarried, no children, no relatives. So now the state statute comes over and says that I have to wait 60 days for somebody to come out of the woodwork to claim what is there. In the meantime, I have biohazard I have to get rid of because she died at home in bed. She was also a hoarder. Not garbage, but stuff from life. Floor to ceiling, 1,000 square feet of boxes. It took me 2 months to go through that. I was looking for a will, I was looking for next of kin, anything I could because the police couldn't do it. I'm out 4 months' rent. Okay? And on top of that, it's cost me over $10,000 to get the apartment in order so that I could turn around and rent it. Special paint for the odors, I had to tear out a bathroom, I couldn't get the smell out. This is the nth degree that I go to because I couldn't turn it over unless it was correct. But you need to be aware of what it costs us landlords in flipping over an apartment. It's not just a paint job sometimes. Sometimes it's a whole kitchen or a bathroom or carpeting that's been horrendously trashed. You can't, good landlords don't turn over without replacing and correcting. One apartment had cat urine so badly I had to treat the concrete underneath before I could get the smell out and make sure that it was clear before I put in new padding, new carpeting, new tack strips, the whole thing. The good landlords go to that nth degree. Please allow for that. And please take into account all the good things that you heard here tonight. There are a lot of good ideas that really could help everybody. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Alexander Burkhardt at 1425 Northeast 125th Terrace. I first want to say that I appreciate all these efforts that are being made to make a better living for a lot of people, for those buildings that we know about. And there is just one comment I wanted to make, is that bad people will always be bad people. and they will find a way to work around it. They can make the people pay the application fee, the inspection fee, and once it gets at them that they cannot do anything, they would just sell the building and go do it somewhere else. So it's just to take in consideration that it's a lot of people feel penalized having to do this. Bad people will find ways to work around it, and if they can't, then they sell the building and change and do it all over again. So it's just a little thought about penalizing good people, and bad people will find their way. Thank you.
Any other gonna be taking to these comments?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Attorney. My name is Felipe Acharte. I work for Marcus Millichap. I've been selling apartment buildings in the city of North Miami for over 10 years. From what I've seen, there's a number of good tools that the city of North Miami has. You have the certificate of reoccupancy that a number of investors complain about when the property trades hands. You have code compliance, 40-year recertifications, 10-year recertifications. But implementing this ordinance, I think, will deteriorate the values of the properties and the apartment buildings in the city of North Miami. Several ways. It'll deter investors from wanting to invest here and buy these properties. And it may increase the vacancy rates that you have in the city of North Miami. If it takes longer to get these units rented because they have to wait for the owners or the inspectors to come out to the units, it'll decrease the income of the owners. And unfortunately, as it decreases the income, it decreases the values, it affects the tax basis, and it makes it more difficult for properties to trade hands, and the values will decrease. So I'm asking you to please reconsider implementing this and actually take advantage of the tools that you do have as far as helping the city become a better place. Thank you.
Citizen forum is now closed. Madam Attorney, Councilwoman, you do have so you will be the last person to speak tonight, sir.
My name is Manu Parekh. I own a small hotel on Northwest 7th Avenue. One question very troubling to me is this. When 1997 November, I bought this property, everything was inspected and reoccupancy certificate was issued. Now after 17 years, not 1, 2, 3, we had all the inspections from the state, sometimes they come twice, then the inspection from the county, and then city of North Miami. Last December, they asked me to remove a shade which was there since last 30 years or more, plus there were signs also last 40 years or more, and now they are asking me I'm violating the city code. So I would like to know from the city attorney, where is my situation?
I cannot comment on your personal situation. Perhaps we can have a conversation. I can talk with you after the meeting. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
And question number 2 is, the properties of 60 years old, can the city enforce the owner to make changes for the disability people?
I'll discuss that with you after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Let me ask, how many of you property owners lives in your property, on your rental property? I see. I see. Thank you. Councilwoman Keys, I know you have a couple of comments to make.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. It's taken us 3 tries to be able to notify all of the landlords. I hope we've been successful. I know some of you have not. This is about the last opportunity, though. I know I've tried to call people and ask if they've gotten notice. So I do appreciate it. I think we have a pretty good selection of landlords, and you've all made very valuable suggestions. I wouldn't say that this ordinance is a done deal. I have been working with our attorney to enforce our code enforcement and make some changes to our ordinance. Before even doing this, I did speak to several friends, clients, and landlords, asking them about the inspection. And when I asked all of these people with good buildings and not so good buildings, nobody really had an objection to an inspection. What I do want to make sure, if we can do something differently, is to make sure that our city is not double inspecting. I know we have a certificate of use. These inspection rates do apply to individual units. We have to make sure that this ordinance takes into maybe one inspection of the building and the units. Someone did suggest 30% across the board. Maybe that would not be so onerous. We're trying not to make it expensive, but there are some buildings in this city that are atrocious. The mayor and I have both gone on a few sweeps. The buildings are deplorable. There's no plumbing in some of them. The elevators are not working. One building we went into, people were literally gagging walking in the halls. The stench was so bad, and we cannot allow people to live like that. A suggestion is that we do provide more disclosure for tenants on the walls, in the leases, letting them know what their rights are. So if they are living in this, maybe even an anonymous complaint to the building department, people are afraid. But some of you are, I guess most of you out here are the good landlords, but we do have a few deplorable ones. I do not think it's going to be fair for our code enforcement, our government, to pick and choose, you're a good one, you're a bad one. At what point do you become the bad one? So if we're going to do this, it has to be across the board. We can't just single out bad ones, because who are they? And I'm willing to, and I would like to, and I'm speaking now because we have sunshine laws. Can't discuss this with council members, so whatever I say, the mayor can hear, and it goes on the record. I think we need to fine-tune these, but I've been waiting to hear from the landlords also. Several landlords also talked about their tenant rights. And that was not brought up this evening. But a lot of tenants feel that it's an invasion of their privacy, who have lived in a unit maybe 10 years, don't want the city coming in and inspecting their units. And we do have a clause in 5.42, our attorney's not here, with regard to the tenant does have to allow the inspectors in. So we do need to be cognizant that we do have tenants that really don't want building inspectors. We have a problem with regulation. I will make it on the record that I am opposed to a re-occupancy inspection every time a rental turnover. I think that is going to cost the tenants. Every time someone goes in, there's going to be a $25, $50 fee that our tenants are going to have to pay, because the landlords, you are not going to pay that. It is going to take time. We've got to have an application. We have to give it to the city. The city has to then make an appointment, and they're going to have a certain how many days to come out and inspect. And it's going to cost the landlord's time and effort, not effort, but it's going to cost some time and not being able to get a tenant in the building for maybe 3, 4, 5 days, even a week. So I think if we are inspecting units annually, 30%, we don't need to re-inspect every time someone rents a unit. And I think that's basically it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. And I really appreciate your input, and I appreciate the input of most of you. What I fail to comprehend is that I'm hearing several landlords talking about the value of their property is going to go down if they keep it up to code.
These people have it up to code. It's just an extra financial burden.
And also the
That's the downtime that you're going to have.
As we pay the highest water rate, we're going to be paying soon the highest garbage rate.
That's true.
We own property all over the county. We own 1,600 units. This is not the only city that we deal with. We pay the highest water in the city. We're going to pay the highest garbage. We pay a high real estate tax. the investors are going to run.
They are.
They're going to run,
They
man.
are.
Look, the gentleman had an idea of putting a phone number in there. Let's teach the tenants.
How many of your tenants read their lease? How many of them? No, seriously. How many of your tenants read their lease?
We go over the lease with every single tenant. Now, we can make it where they can sign a document made by the city with a phone number, something that they can call the city. Listen, here the phone.
Let me explain something to you. I would like to invite any of you who are here tonight. Next week we're gonna go on a sweep, and you will see for yourself where we are coming from, as a government who have been elected by the people living in this city. What is our responsibilities to those people, their safety, their well-being? And any of you who are willing to come are welcome to come with us and see for yourself where we're coming from. It has nothing to do with wanting to punish. We're not in school here. This is not a schoolyard. Why would we go and try to punish people? But, hello? The reason, madam, I'm speaking, I would like for you to respect that. Thank you. If the residents of this city are paying rent, $800, $900, $1,500 a month, it is inconceivable, as Councilwoman Keys just mentioned, for the elevator not to work, for rats to be all over the place in the building, for mold to be all over the place in their apartment, for the oven not working, and those cabinets broken. It is not okay. And you need to understand that your investment, you are in the business of dealing with people. You are in the business of renting people property where they're raising their children as well. Safety first, health first. And I would understand if all of the tenants, I'm talking about the slumlords, I'm not talking about any of you here because I'm not sure that I can identify any of your buildings, although some of them I know. If you were to live there on a daily basis, if it would be acceptable, if it was a family member living in those buildings, if it is acceptable. Some of the buildings you walk in, it smells. Tenants have been complaining, landlord been knocking on their door, threaten them if they come to the city to complain. It's not okay. It's not okay. And we are not here to punish anybody. We are the city of progress. And of course, any of you who believe that we are paying too much and you're going to sell your property and move on, you know, we will miss you, but it's okay. I would rather have few apartments, good landlords, wonderful tenants, and children that are being raised in a safety and healthy environment than having 2,000 apartment buildings where our children are not safe, where the handicapped cannot take the elevator because it's not working, where rats are in their apartments. It is not acceptable. Just want to thank you guys because Citizen Forum has been closed. We just wanted to do the closing remarks. And any of you, please, who would like to come with us when we go out there, you can give your name to Mr. Armand. We will be more than happy to notify you, and we'll do the ride together, and you'll understand where we're coming from. Thank you for coming.